Good afternoon, Greg. My name's Hilary. It's a pleasure to have you back at Otago again.
It's a pleasure to be here.
We've got a few questions for you this afternoon. To start us off, tell us, what did you study at university and how did you start your career after graduation?
Well, I studied physics and maths here at Otago initially, and then I worked for 3 years and then went to Canterbury University to do a 1-year Masters in Electrical and Electronic Engineering. My first job out of university was as an electronics technician, which is basically an extension of a holiday job, just sort of luck really. But then I got a job here at the university working in the energy management unit, and I was programming computers which controlled heating and ventilation and electricity consumption in buildings, and that was really my first introduction to the energy industry very early on.
Oh, wow. So what role do the disciplines of accountancy and finance play in the day-to-day operation of your business?
Well, obviously as the managing director, I need management accounts every month and I need to understand my balance sheet. So there's a very practical use of accounting knowledge at a fairly basic level there. But more importantly, in the work that I do in the electricity market, I have to understand how financial markets for hedging, for example, are working. I need to understand the financial instruments being used. So that's quite a challenge for someone that came out of fairly technical disciplines, but it's very, very important in the work that we do.
How did your tertiary education prepare you for the responsibilities that you now manage?
Well, initially I studied physics and maths at honours level, so I had a very high workload, which meant that I had several assignments each week plus lab reports to do. So I got very good at working out what had to be done and what didn't really need to be done, what really counted, so that I could meet conflicting deadlines. And that's exactly the sort of thing that I have to do every day at work. We have multiple clients, multiple deadlines, limited resources, and it's exactly the same sort of decisions that I have to make.
What makes working in the energy sector challenging?
The energy sector is very large. It pervades everything that we do. It's absolutely essential. I think for the electricity market, which is where I've spent most of my time, it's an incredibly interesting mixture of both physics and finance. So I get to think about the physics of how the national grid works, for example, how electricity is generated and consumed, and I also get to think about the interaction with financial markets around electricity. And that mix is incredibly challenging but also incredibly interesting.
Yeah. So tell us, how has deregulation of the energy sector impacted the business, and how have you as managing director responded?
So the electricity market in particular, I spend most of my day is about 20 years old, and if we go back 20 or 30 years, it was entirely centrally controlled. It was all owned by the government and operated by the government. Deregulation has changed all of that, and that's led to a much greater rate of innovation in the industry, and that meant that the rate of change has increased substantially. So a lot of what I do is understanding how the industry is changing and how it might change in the future.
Well, that leads really well into our next question. We're seeing a lot of change in the world economy and in the way energy is sourced. So how does Energy Link prepare for and manage constant change?
We absolutely are seeing change, and the rate of change is increasing.
Yeah.
And energy has been relatively immune from that in the past, but that's all changing. So really it comes down to three things. Firstly, we need to get very close to our customers, and we're based in Dunedin. Most of our customers are in the North Island, so that does mean some travel. But if I don't get to meet the customers face to face regularly, then I can't understand what their challenges are and how change is affecting them. I need to understand the trends that are going on in the industry right now, and perhaps more importantly, I need to understand how trends in society, global trends if you like, are going to impact on the energy sector in a few years' time, or maybe in a decade's time, so that I can anticipate the next set of trends and changes that are going to impact the industry and hence impact on us as a company.
Just thinking about new grads for a second, how can students enhance their skill set for employment?
Well, good grades are certainly important, I would say. But a graduate needs to think about the sort of roles that they might be interested in actually working in, and what skills and experience those are going to require. Obviously, if you haven't had one of those roles, it's more difficult to pick those up. So think about the types of activities you can get involved in. Some of them might be paid, some of them might be unpaid, which can give you some of those skills and experience. For an example, if you're interested in being an accountant and you're interested in sports, maybe you could join a sports club and be their treasurer, and that would give you direct experience in accounting, which you could put on your CV and an employer would take account of at an interview.
What qualities does EnergyLink look for in graduate recruits?
So I have my rule of thirds. Basically, I'm looking for 1/3 technical, which I can pretty much tell from the grades on the CV.
Yeah.
And I'm looking for 1/3 how the person will fit into my business, particularly what their communication skills are like, and how their personality complements our team. So we don't always want someone who's very analytical and quiet and stares into a computer all day. We don't always want someone that's extroverted and very good at marketing, for example. We're really choosing the right person for the right role. And finally, I'm interested in understanding how they get on and actually doing the work. Some people are very good at understanding problems, not very good at resolving them. And the working environment, we certainly need people who can not only understand problems, but also solve them and work effectively and efficiently at doing that.
Now, Greg, if you were to start your career again, what is one thing that you would do different?
Well, actually, I'm pretty happy with my career. I don't have any regrets. But because the electricity industry in particular is a mixture of physics and finance, and I've got lots of physics and engineering obviously from my university study, it would definitely have been a help to me if I'd picked up some more financial and economics study and knowledge early on in my career. So perhaps a paper or two in economics or finance would be added into the mix if I ever got to do it again.
Correct. You talked about this at a seminar you gave, but how do you balance the demands of a busy workload with family and personal time?
Well, I think it all comes down to understanding what your priorities are. If you desperately want to be the CEO of one of the largest industrial conglomerates in the world, you're probably not going to have a lot of time for your family, and you just need to accept that. For my own part, family life and personal life are very, very important, so I make sure that I work hard at work, I work effectively, I don't muck around, and that means that I can walk out the office at 5:30 or 6 o'clock or whatever and go home and do the other things that I enjoy with my family. I think the number of hours that you work is a good guide. I personally haven't averaged more than about 42 or 43 hours a week of actual working time in the office over my career. And certainly if someone was doing more than say 45 or 50 hours a week, I would say they're probably not spending enough time with their family. But that number of hours each week is a really, really good guide to where the balance lies. Is it with work or is it with family and personal life?
Well, thank you, Greg, for your time and for your conversation this afternoon. It's been really great and a pleasure to have you at Otago again.
You're very welcome.